Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline. We have some Bills chatter to get to. Jeremy and Joe. Hope your Thursday is going well. Thanks for joining us, if you are. And if you're not, well, thanks anyway. You could also just still join us. I'm wishing everyone a good Thursday, including you, Sal. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Rookie camp getting started shortly. The Bills at phase 2 of off-season workouts, and we have a Gabe Davis conversation to have because it kind of does present itself as interesting given how available he might be if the match is there. So where do you like to start? You want to start with Gabe?
Sure. I think we can. We should. I guess maybe not super surprised, a little bit surprised, though, by the kind of overwhelming, pretty dug-in sentiment from a lot of the fan base that they wouldn't be interested, wouldn't want him. You know, I mean, it just seems like I know he was a bit of a polarizing player in a lot of ways, not for anything off the field, antics, nothing like that, but just, you know, the bad moments, some of the drops that were there. I just think there's a lot of that outweighing a lot of the good that he did for the team from the fan base. I'm not saying people are right or wrong. I'm kind of just from an observer, a little bit surprised about it because he was a good player for the Bills. I mean, he was certainly a really good 4th-round pick. I mean, you know, you take that into consideration, but independent of that, he was not worth the contract for the Bills. It was a good decision to let him go to Jacksonville for that money. Good for Gabe to get that. It was a good decision. The Bills weren't going to bring him back at that money. It wasn't going to play that role. But man, like this is a player that you drafted, you developed. He won your Iron Bill Award 2 years in a row as the offseason's hardest worker. People can scoff at that and say it doesn't matter. I mean, I think that those kinds of things those are the kinds of players that you can seamlessly bring into your organization that fit in. Is there a question about really what role he'd be where he is? Absolutely, I get that. But as I posed to you guys, I think yesterday, as soon as you were not around when this happened, Jeremy, you had it was the last hour of the show, and I said to Joe, and I think this is a good debate. Shope and Bulldog actually had 2 different answers to this when I said the same question. If I give you a choice, dollars for dollar to the same, and I know that's not the case, who's better on this team, Gabe Davis or Curtis Samuel? And I think if you say Gabe Davis or even have a debate, then there's room for this guy to at least you could make an argument for him to go after him.
Yeah. You know, Sal, if you just, do an old-fashioned pros-cons list, I think the cons are injury concerns, the cons are drops concerns, and maybe where he slots in. But the pros side of it, like you said, the Iron Bill Award. I think with Davis here, as we just entertain the possibility that could happen, he's more than a culture fit. He's a culture driver for them. Yeah. And Mitch Morse tweeting yesterday about him, like Morse played with him here and played with him in Jacksonville last year, and Morse flat out called out the Jags like, I don't get it. This guy's done everything you could ask him to do. So even though he's gone through injuries and he might not be worth that money, he would basically be free for the Bills to sign because of that offside money. So it's not even a what would you pay? It's basically if Gabe wants it, should the Bills want it?
Yeah, that's right. I don't see much of a downside, to be quite honest, unless you feel that he's blocking someone from doing something on your team. Like that to me would be the only downside. If you want to make that argument, go right ahead. Like that, I could listen to it. But otherwise, what is the downside? If you think that he's a terrible player, I guess, I don't think he's a terrible player. I think he had some tough moments, no doubt. I think some great moments for the Bills. I think there's a lot of that, though, that gets... it's just, to me, just really kind of unfair to Gabe that in a lot of ways, the expectations that happened after the Kansas City game, right, the 4 touchdowns, and I even remember being on the field the following year against the Rams, and it was Matthew Berry of NBC. And even he was like, yeah, Gabe Davis, after last year and looking for this. I think it was the fantasy football sentiment of it from the people from the outside looking into the numbers.
He was one of the bigger he was one of the bigger fantasy conversations about like the polarizing receiver. Is he ready for his breakout?
I mean, it was beyond that though too. Like you're definitely right about that fantasy conversation, but I remember like even Mike Evans saying that he thought Gabe Davis was the most underrated receiver in the league and he was going to break out. So it was his peers have talked him up too.
No doubt. So I think that because of that, there were expectations that he never hit, and that was partly on him. That was partly on because of the offense they ran and a lot of different things that go into that, right? He was never that true number one guy. And look, I mean, the Bills, to me, I think Joe said this. I agree with Joe with what you said yesterday about the skill set of a guy like Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore is more needed than the skill set of Gabe Davis. Now, that said, Gabe Davis's his numbers show that he's a downfield stretcher, even though we don't think of him that way. He's not this burner. But they do need guys like that in the offense. I don't see much of a downside. And look, I think what happens a lot of times is we sit here, and you guys are doing this morning, and we all do it. It's natural, which is people are tweeting and calling, and we're talking about, well, where does he fit in on the 53? Well, wait, we're a long way from a 53,
yeah.
Right? I mean, like, if the more people you can get to compete for the 53, the better. By the time you get to August, what if Curtis Samuel has a turf toe injury again? What if Elijah Moore twists an ankle? And if you could be sitting there going, boy, what if they would have signed Gabe Davis? Right? Like,
right.
What if he's here right now? I just think that there's nothing wrong with having competition to elevate the group.
And to take this down the road a little further, Sal, that's where it comes down to, what does Davis want? Does he want a place where he's going to get targets and there's an open spot, like maybe Pittsburgh is an answer here, or maybe the Giants, or maybe New England, or maybe, any number of teams, Seattle, whatever. Does he want to prove to the league, I can still play, I want to play, 4 or 5 more years. Maybe he never hits 13 million again, but he's going to continue to make money and be a professional player. Or does he kind of look at it, and Tre'Davious White's not the best example here, like Trey White might not have as much time left as Davis does. Does he look at it like, I didn't want to leave, and now I have the opportunity to go back, and I'm financially fine, and I can just try and win a Super Bowl and try to make that team?
It's a good question. I will tell you that, I've gotten to know Gabe really well over his last couple of years in Buffalo, as you guys know, and he really loves Buffalo. I mean, he was just here, actually. Joe and I were looking at some pictures at the Shane Gillis concert, apparently, last Saturday night. He still has some ties here in Buffalo. He does come back once in a while. He loved this city, being in this city, being a part of this city. I know people around him loved him being in this city. All of those boxes are checked, right? Football-wise, is it the best fit for him? That's a good question. If I'm Gabe Davis and I'm looking at it, I'm probably thinking Pittsburgh might be better. Now, I will tell you, when Gabe left for Jacksonville, through that process, through the communication I had with people, I know Pittsburgh was one of the teams that was interested at the time. I don't know if they still would be. Chicago was a team interested at the time. Since then, they've done a lot of different things. They have a new coach. I don't know if that would be the case anymore. The Giants have always been kind of lurking because of Brian Dable, Joe Shane, obviously, out there. So I don't know if those teams, but I would tell you the Giants with Daboll, with their receiving group, the Steelers with what they did yesterday, football-wise, that might make way more sense for Gabe Davis. Even if he loves Buffalo, he may say, I'm not going to have the same opportunity, and I would totally understand that.
How do you see the money part of it, Sal? There's this talk about like the offset language. Remember talking about this with Russell Wilson last year that, unless some team is going to offer him more than $11 million, which I think is lunacy to think somebody would do that, then basically Davis is going to get his money. Right, so like whoever signs him can do it for the vet minimum, because anything more than that, you're just basically giving money to the Jaguars. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I have to read into it a little bit more to find out exactly all the financials on that. But I think it sounds about right, where I guess the best way to just think of it would be you wouldn't have to
There'd be
use
no money
a ton
downside
of salary cap space to sign him. You know
right,
what I mean?
like when you say there's no downside to it, I agree with you, and part of the reason I do is it sounds like the way his contract works and him getting, released here by the Jaguars is if he did want to come back and the Bills wanted to bring him in, it feels like they can do it without ever thinking about, well, you're paying him this much, so you got to play him.
Yeah, so offset language basically is, the way it works in some contracts. This happens with coaches a lot, actually. When they go to another team. Rex Ryan, I think, had offset language, which actually I think applied to his job at ESPN when he left the Bills, to be quite honest with you, from what I was told back in the day. Which is basically if you have offset language in your contract, it's okay, you're getting this money from Team A, so if you go sign with Team B for less, it doesn't matter. The Team A is still kind of paying that salary up until that money. Anything above that, you're responsible for, but he's getting that baseline. I think, though, in the NFL, even though that's the case, you still have to account for the veteran minimum at least, right? So that would be the case here. Right, so that would be the case here. We don't see this a lot in the NFL, but it does happen sometimes. So just to poke around a little bit, if that were the case, let's just say that is the case, then again, what are we talking about? A veteran minimum type deal. I think what you said before, Jeremy, is right. The question, I think, would come down to, even if the Bills were very interested, would Gabe Davis want to do that? As much as he might like Buffalo, love Buffalo, want to, he may say, it's just, I don't want to go back. and rerun that. I've moved on in my career, and there's other opportunities for me out there. That's very possible. But I'm a little surprised. I really am at some of the backlash from fans that say, no way, I don't want any part of that. And I think yesterday was interesting, kind of reading all of that.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline as we talk about a little bit about Gabe, but also about rookie minicamp as things are going to get started. And coverage of rookie minicamp is brought to you by Fiegel Carr and Joyce, your border attorneys, brought to you in part by Window Nation, the perfect fit for your home and wallet. Bill's rookie minicamp coverage here, Sal. All right, so is it part of Phase 2? Like the rookie camp kind of slides under the umbrella of Phase 2, or is it a little different the way that it operates with rookies with regard to veterans right now that are doing voluntary stuff?
I believe rookie minicamp falls under Phase 3, actually, because they get to do more. Like the Phase 2 is for the veteran camps, for the guys that are basically able to, you've passed Phase 1, which is just conditioning. Now you're doing a little bit more in the field. I mean, they're actually they'll be running like football stuff out there. They're not hitting each other, rookie minicamp, but they'll be lining up in positions, and so it's more than that. So I believe it falls under its own category of like a Phase 3 type of camp, right?
Because they're very much allowed to work with coaches, where early on coaches and players kind of can't do stuff together, right?
Correct, exactly right. So they'll be out there on Friday and on Saturday. We only get to watch them on Friday, and then we'll get to talk to rookies afterwards, and kind of get a sense for those guys and learn about them a little bit. But yeah, that's what's going on. And then for the team itself, the rest of the team, I should say, the first 2 weeks they were in Phase 1. Now the next few weeks they're in Phase 2, which I believe started earlier this week. And again, that's now you're starting to be able to do a little bit more with footballs, with actual coaches, stuff like that. And then obviously this will dovetail towards the end of the month into OTAs, is what they're going to officially call them, and then mandatory mini camp for 3 days in June, which is a lot more obviously football stuff and guys that need to be here. Right now it's still voluntary.
And on rookie minicamp, Sal, some of the thinking about, some of the players that will be there, the draft picks specifically, how do you think about this is kind of like the beginning of the ramping up for these guys in the building, especially like how important it is for the draft picks at the end? Like the 6th and 7th round picks. Every year the Bills end up releasing one or two just because that's the roster. It's a deep roster and it's tough to make it. And whether it's Dorian Strong, Chase Lunt, Caden Prather, this is kind of the start of, I don't want to say it's an uphill climb, but it's definitely going to be tough to make the roster at positions that are pretty deep.
I would say it this way, Joe. I don't think anyone doesn't make the team, but people could make the team. Meaning this wouldn't be draft picks. This would be guys like on rookie tryout basis, like Joe Andreessen. Like, remember, this is where they found Joe Andreessen last year. They went to rookie minicamp. They gave him an invite. You're going to get guys who are not under contract who are at rookie minicamp. So when we get out there tomorrow will be the day. There's going to be a little card given to all the media. Here's the rookie minicamp roster. There's going to be a bunch of names on there people don't recognize. There's going to be undrafted free agents. Maybe you've read about them. And then there's going to be tryout players. You're like, oh, this guy, he's trying out. And he's from Erie, PA. He's from Syracuse. He's from Buffalo. He's a local guy. Oh, this guy, yeah, he played, for a year in the CFL or whatever. There's certain rules about how much you can have experience to be a part of this whole thing. They have 4 quarterbacks on their regular roster right now. None of them are eligible for rookie minicamp. You know what that means? Someone's coming in to throw the ball. So, they're going to have someone on a rookie minicamp tryout to play quarterback. And, look, that guy's probably not going to make the team, but who knows what happens when you get here and they go, hey, you know what? Really, really like a certain person, whatever position that is. Now, as far as the drafted guys are concerned, yeah, I mean, this is more of a, hey, we need to get you in here. We need to kind of get you acclimated. They're not making the team or not making the team based on what happens this weekend. This is really just more of an acclimation period for everybody. But it is an important period for guys, like I said, who, look, they only have 89 on the roster right now. They are allowed 91 because Travis Clayton is still considered an international guy. So there are 2 spots left if the Bills feel someone wows them and they can sign them to a deal like they did Andreessen last year.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline, previewing Bills' rookie minicamp. Great moments in rookie minicamp history, Sal. I mean, my biggest one is Jason Peters catching a pass from J.P. Lossman. But, what do we really find out about these guys? Or is it really about how these players start to find out what life is like with the Bills?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the case, right? I mean, I could tell you, I have a couple, I wouldn't say great moments, but things do stand out. Like, the 2 guys that I remember specifically that were to me, okay, like, wow, he's Sammy Watkins. Like when I remember seeing him for the first time, like, okay, he's just different, right? Like he's a little different. And the other guy actually stands out for this was Ron Darby. I thought Ron Darby, like when you could see he was just a better athlete than all the other guys out there.
Yeah.
The first time I saw him at rookie minicamp, I remember thinking that about him. I think Tre'Davious, Josh Reed and I think he'll share this story too at some if you talk to him, because I remember him sharing it, and I said, yeah, that did happen. We were standing next to each other when Tre'Davious was out in the field, and I think something like when the ball was like going to his hands, you could kind of feel it, you could hear it. It's kind of smoother, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't fighting it. You could remark and you could tell that. Then you just have the guys that are just bigger guys, and you say, "Whoa, that guy's he's look at him in his shorts and in his helmet, standing there." So those kinds of things do happen. You know, it's a chance for these guys to get here, and not only on the field, guys. Let's remember, this is also the weekend.
The bus tour?
In some capacity, they're going to kind of learn Buffalo. They're going to be taken out on tours.
All right.
They're going to be taken around town. They're going to go to the Niagara Falls. We used to do that, and the media was a part of it, where we'd go and kind of film it and, talk to these guys. That's not the case anymore. The Bills' own media might have some stuff on that and social, but they'll kind of be touring Western New York a little bit in some capacity, I'm sure. That's what they usually do.
Very good.
Are you jealous, Sal, that the Rams are having their mini camp in Maui?
Maui camp is what they call it. Maui camp.
Maui camp.
Put a word in to
McDermott.
I mean, see if you can move it to Hawaii next year.
Interesting, right? And then next year they're going to Australia, the Rams.
Yep.
For a game.
For a game.
We were just talking about that actually in the last segment about, not to say the Bills will play in that game. Did you look up there? They don't even play the Rams next year?
I don't think they do.
Okay, but either way.
They could.
Yeah, the common finisher could line up.
But we were talking about like what time that game would be at because of the difference, and like if you put it on at 9 a.m, that's midnight at Australian time, or if you want it at some reasonable time Australian time, it'll be in the middle of the night here. So that's not this year's schedule debate, though. That'll be next year. But
well, Joe, is this the part where I say you should listen to our Always Game Day podcast, Buffalo podcast, where we talked about this? We literally talked about this and asked him. But your point is right, actually, and what you said is exactly what he said, which is you got to figure that out.
Yep.
Because of the time differences, like where do you want to slot that game? My thought is, I think what they might do, and I don't know this for sure, I think what they might do is play that game on the Saturday before the season starts, right? So you have the Thursday game for the opener for the championship, the Super Bowl winner. You have that Friday international game, right, that we've been that's had.
Yep.
And then maybe you play that one on Saturday, and you do it because if you do it at a time where it's a Saturday night and it's Sunday there, right?
I was going to say, yes, it's Sunday in Australia, but Saturday night here.
Right, you do that, then you actually give those teams a little extra time to get back and get ready for the next week. And what you could do is you could take the teams that play in that game and put them on a doubleheader Monday night the following week to give them an extra day.
Right, all right. Interesting.
That's good.
Let's get a call in quickly with Sal before the break. Brad in East Aurora. Hey, Brad, what's up?
Hey, guys. I would absolutely love to see Gabe Davis back on the Bills. I think at the very least, he'd be an upgrade from Matt Collins, the guy who was on the field all the time last year. And I know that Gabe absolutely embodies what it means to be a Buffalo Bill, and I'd love to see him back. I think his downfall really was that huge game against the Chiefs, the 4-touchdown game, and everybody expected him to be that, and he wasn't. But I'd love to see him back on the Bills. I think he'd be an excellent addition.
Thanks, Brad. Sal, one thing, I'll just mention this as another potential feather in Gabe's cap if the pairing were to reunite, which who knows? Again, I really feel like it's almost more up to Gabe. Has anybody ever had better downfield chemistry with Allen than him? Isn't he number one in terms of getting behind defenses? He's the guy that was able to do that, obviously, in that game, but also in other spots, too. We got the 98-yard touchdown against Pittsburgh. He went over the top of teams a bunch of times. And, I know the Bills talk about wanting that, and maybe they get that from the slot with Elijah Moore and maybe Josh Palmer as well. But it's just, to me, it's worth pointing out that chemistry, it was pretty consistent.
I agree. His downfield numbers were good. Average depth of target, I think he kind of led the league or was near the top of the league in several years with the Buffalo Bills. But you're right. And we don't think of Gabe as this burner. but he's always been a guy that was able to get down the field and make plays down the field. And you're right, with Josh Allen, they had good chemistry. Unfortunately, didn't have that chemistry in that Eagles game, right? I mean, that was that's one play that stands out for the negative that people point to and look at. There were a couple others, right? There's a couple drops along the way, and I understand that. And if that's what people are pointing to, why they wouldn't, welcome him back, then yeah, I get it. Like I understand that. I just think that there's a lot of good as well that he has been a part of.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I hadn't thought of like him thought even at the end was when Joe Brady takes over as offensive coordinator. I don't know how much this has to matter, but I mean, there were a ton of games where he just wasn't involved at all. Like of the games Brady was the offensive coordinator, he had 4 games without a catch. But you also did have 2 games in there where he went over 100. So remember that at the end, it was kind of back or forth. Like he wasn't at all involved. And then even that Eagle game that you referenced, where him and Allen are off that might have been in overtime, where we thought they did a touchdown. Like Gabe went for 6 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown in that game.
Well, it's interesting because, he leaves at the same time as Stephon Diggs. And Diggs was clearly the number one. And then they go to the everybody eats mentality and mantra, right? And that's not Gabe. He's not a part of that. And you wonder if he's a part of that, is it any different for him? So,
right.
Yeah, it's interesting to monitor and see where this goes. I wouldn't rule it out for the Buffalo Bills. Never rule something like that out. They just did. They just went out and brought back Tre'Davious White and Dane Jackson. This is not Joe had the list. A couple weeks ago. The guys this happens to. But I do think that if you're Gabe Davis, I think you have to look at the football landscape and decide also like what is your best opportunity and chance here.
Thank you, Sal.
You got it, guys.
Sal Capaccio.
By the way, hey, real quick, you guys got me?
Yeah.
We're gonna have Ryan Green on from Jacksonville today.
Very good.
Good radio host down there, and he'll kind of fill in maybe some of the gaps of why this has been, why Gabe was released basically by the Jaguars. So we'll have him on today.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Sal.
You got it.
Sal